Knock on that door and the people there will help you, says my sister. I was scared. I went into the house not knowing what I was getting myself into or who I was meeting. I was raped outside the house in the alleyway and beat with sticks. For the first 2 weeks, I really didn't know what was going on, and then when I tried to get out the back door, it was padlocked from the outside. I found the basement in the house, and I went down there, and there were 2 girls, probably not older than 16, chained to the wall from pipes on mattresses who were barely under any sheets and were freezing. I was found down there, and I was hit in the head with the back of a sawed-off AR-15, and when I came to, the tip of the gun was in my mouth, and he told me I have 2 choices. You can either help these girls get ready for their next job, or you can take a bullet. This is the story of a young girl named Jane who got caught in the sex trafficking here in the Ozarks. Homeland Security Department of Justice defines human trafficking as such: a modern-day form of slavery involving the illegal trade of people for exploitation or commercial gain. Traffickers use force, fraud, or coercion to lure their victims and force them into labor or commercial sexual exploitation. The acts, the means, and the purpose are the 3 core elements of sex trafficking. One does not go without the other, but all 3 add up together to create the idea of human trafficking. The act consists of recruitment, transportation, and harboring of these women. The victims of sex trafficking will often get lured in by the means element of the sex trafficking. This consists of threat, use of force, coercion, abduction, fraud, deception, abuse of power or vulnerability, or payments and benefits. The purpose element of human trafficking seems to be the most known. This is the part of trafficking where the exploitation occurs, which can include prostitution of the women, sexual exploitation, forced labor, slavery, and even removal of organs to sell. Traffickers consist of both men and women, but men seem to hold the majority. Traffickers that are men are also known as pimps. Every sex trafficking story is a little different, but in common sex trafficking cases, the pimps will do most of the enticing. They start out by friending the girl or making them believe that they are someone they're not. Vulnerable girls or women who have struggled are the key targets for pimps. The pimps will take that and use it to their advantage, whether it be to help the women financially or maybe a step in their career. The pimps will get the victims to a place of reliance where they have no choice but to be obedient. Obedience is vital to the pimp. These men will often drug, sexually assault, or beat them until the obedience and loyalty is theirs. After this stage, the pimps can now start using the females to their advantage, exploiting them and selling their bodies for profit. Women easily get trapped in sex trafficking principles because they'll do the initial act thinking it is innocent. This is why it is important to know exactly what exploitation is. Exploitation is anything that involves the mishandling of a person through an unjust way. Exploitation can easily become human trafficking if women get trapped in doing things further than the initial act. When comparing sex trafficking to other profitable crimes, it is rated number 3. It follows narcotics being in the first place and gun trade in second. The drug industry goes hand in hand with sex trafficking because, as I discussed earlier, the pimps will use it to manipulate the women. Sex trafficking brings in approximately $31.6 trillion every year. Andrea Nichols and Aaron Heel researched and completed a study looking at the challenges in identifying and prosecuting sex trafficking cases in the Midwest. The Midwestern city they chose to focus on was St. Louis. This city is susceptible to trafficking based on a number of risk factors, including a large number of runaways, a growing immigrant population, a thriving sex trade industry, and their geographical location. This study draws from an in-depth interview and 2 focus groups with 12 total participants, including 1 federal prosecutor, 3 police officers, 3 legal service attorneys and advocates, and 3 social service providers. The data collection of the study consisted of face-to-face interviews or focus groups. They lasted about 1 hour each and recorded so that we could later study them. A variety of themes came to surface after the interviews, revolving around the issues in identifying sex trafficking. They were online solicitation, interstate movement, and secrecy. The first commonality the participants had was the issue of online solicitation. In one of the interviews, a social worker reported that there are certain codes they'll use when soliciting underage girls, such as young, new, fresh to the scene, cheerleader, princess, all indicating they're underage. Within the ad, they'll also price the girls by using a code. They won't say that the girl's worth $80, but they'll say 80 hugs, 80 stars, 80 hearts. And that's the code the pimps know to use. The second theme concluded from the interviews were the problem with the geographical location of St. Louis. The interstates that run through St. Louis make it very difficult to catch pimps. They'll move their girls around to different cities so that they do not attract too much attention to the authorities. This is known as running the circuit. The federal prosecutor described a case involving such interstate movement of 2 underage girls, where the trafficker was caught by chance due to a traffic violation. The girls ended up having missing girls reports out for both of them. But without the traffic violation, they may have never been found. The next main theme amongst the participants was keeping traffickers indoors. They discussed that prostitution largely occurred in trucks, hotels, residents, or private parties, which decreases the chance of identification. Another social worker describes an instance where a woman was sex trafficked, but not how the average case might look from the outside. This woman was kept in a very nice house with high alarming security, and her clientele having similar lifestyles. From the outside, no one would guess that she is stuck there, but in reality, she could not leave nor have contact with anyone else. Findings in the present study indicates that victims were not partaking in street prostitution, but rather victims met with clients largely in indoor situations and were advertised on the internet. At the same time, police leadership noted that prostitution was not typically investigated for the possibility of sex trafficking, but rather women who are being trafficked as street prostitution is often looked over when being arrested. Police will just arrest these women for the current act, prostitution, but not know or choose to investigate any further for trafficking indicators. These women will be arrested, stay overnight, and then be released, often right back into the arms of their pimp. So what can we do? How can we fix this, and what needs to be done? The first step is becoming aware of how relevant this topic is right here in Missouri. Yes, it is a major issue in foreign countries, but most trafficking occurs nationally. In fact, over 80% of sex trafficking is domestic. There are about 27 million people considered slaves currently, and when diving deeper in statistics for Missouri specifically, Missouri is in the top 20 states for sex trafficking, with St. Louis being the 5th largest trafficking city in the nation. This is just a few hours from where we are now, here in Springfield, Missouri. A local sex trafficking nonprofit organization found that our area has the most prosecuted cases of human trafficking than any other district in Missouri. That's actually a good thing because that means something is being done, but it is still alarming that these high statistics are so close to home. The National Human Trafficking Hotline states that in 2017, Missouri had 74 cases reported and 240 calls. Overall, we have to have better education on this absurd crime. We need to learn the indicators of human trafficking to stop it when we see it. Lastly, action. Get involved. Become part of the journey to ending human slavery. An awesome Springfield organization known as Go 61 works on educating people on rescuing victims along with restoration of women and men who have personally been wronged through sex trafficking. Go 61 says it perfectly. We humbly confess that our standard of living should not be more important than others. And then we take action. Even if it is just one step at a time, every action is significant and every journey has a starting point. I want people to know this is real and it happens in our town and it happens every day, says human trafficking survivor Jane. There's a hotline you can call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week that will get you in contact with someone who can help.